conversations around India's neighborhood, its evolving geopolitical landscape. While those discussions examined the external dynamics, we felt that it was equally important to reflect on how global developments translate into internal economic and structural implications for India. Today's program is an attempt to bridge that perspective, linking global conflicts and disruptions with their tangible impact on economies, particularly through the lens of supply chains and economic resilience. To explore this in depth, we have structured today's discussion into two sessions. The first focuses on the economics of the Gulf War, followed by supply chain disruption impact on India. We are glad to have an engaging panel of speakers with us for both of the sessions. To begin with our first session, it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers. Mr. M.K. Venu is a founding editor of The Wire, an independent digital platform known for its incisive coverage of politics and policy. With nearly 4 decades of experience in journalism, he has held senior editorial roles at The Economic Times, Financial Express, Hindu, Hindustan Times, and Amar Ujala. He's also hosted State of the Economy on Rajya Sabha television and has contributed his insights to parliamentary committees and public policy. Welcome, Visa. Next, we have Mr. Anil Dua. He's a seasoned business leader with extensive experiences across consumer goods, media, and technology sectors. He's currently co-founder at the e-mobility division of the SAR Group, contributing to India's transition towards electric mobility. Over the years, he has held leadership roles at Unilever, Gillette, Hero Motocorp, and Dish TV. He is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad. Next, we have with us Mr. Udit Misra. He's a senior associate editor at the Indian Express with over 2 decades of experience covering the Indian economy and policy landscape. An alumnus of the Delhi School of Economics, he is widely recognized for his explanatory journalism, making complex economic issues accessible and relevant to a broad audience. To guide and moderate this discussion, we are honored to have with us Mr. Safi Ahsan Rizvi, IPS retired, who has had a distinguished career in public service and brings with him deep experience in governance, security, and institutional system. He has served as former advisor to the National Disaster Management Authority and as executive director at the NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management. I now request our speakers and the moderator to kindly come up on the dais. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manika. And thank you to this very established and very erudite set of 3 panelists who we've got today. They were kind enough to say yes and come by. Venu carries 4 decades of experience on economy and political economy. Mr. Dua is also close to 4 decades of actual work in the private sector. And Mr. Mishra has become a very focused economic word that we get to see once a week for sure. And between the week, we get to read some very deep and incisive research that he puts forward on economics, bringing out things that we don't see in normal day. In fact, one credit for Mr. Mishra is that I pick up and read his pieces before I read Economic Times. So we have a very distinguished set of people here to discuss supply chains. I think this couldn't be a better panel. So we did a little bit of research into what you guys also write. And so I framed certain tough questions, and we'll start with Venu. So at one point you went and wrote somewhere that the war has reached our kitchen. So what exactly did you mean by that?
Well, so that was early on, within the first 10 days of the war. It was visible to everybody. Actually, I said this also on Al Jazeera. They're talking to me. I said there were visible cues across different states for LPG. LPG was being sold on the black market at 3,000 rupees per cylinder, etc. And also, I saw visual images of people going back to their because LPG was not available, cooking gas. People were going back to their villages, which happened across different states, especially in the north central India, even Gujarat. So that kind of triggered this thing that it's reached people's kitchens, because
So the consumers basically are getting
basically
impacted.
cooking. It has reached people's homes. And the other point I made was that if this continues, which it is, we India could partially move back to the firewood economy. A lot of people are going back to the villages. And they're saying on television that at least at home, back in villages, we can use firewood. So
Okay, interesting. So yes, so that's a good way to start this discussion. That after 2 months of war, we are at a situation where the war has started reaching the consumer. So we'll go to Mr. Udit Misra. At one point, he went and compared this looming El Nino that is about to come and hit the world, and it's said to be one of the most dangerous El Ninos in many years that is coming. So he's written a piece comparing that if the El Nino shock and this oil shock continue, and both of them come together, then what's going to happen? So could you just expound a bit on that?
Yeah, thanks. Well, essentially, that was an analysis done by one of the research houses, I think it was HSBC, that the oil shock or the energy shock is hitting us around the time when we might also face a super El Nino, which is very high temperatures that would then perhaps result in lower reservoir levels and food productivity will take a hit. So at a time when you are facing inflationary pressures on the energy side, you also have food inflation adding up to overall inflation. And the numbers are fairly scary depending on how you look at the oil prices and the intensity of El Nino. And those numbers will very easily go above the RBI's comfort zone of 6%, the upper limit of RBI's comfort zone, and then go into 7, 8, 9, and then gets really alarming. So it's not so much so to focus on any one particular number, but the point is that if you have elevated oil prices, I mean, just before February 28th, when we had the hostilities, oil prices were around $65 per barrel. Right now, anything above 100 is par for the course, and these numbers are the forward contracts. I'll buy from you in August or September at this price. If you were to buy today, it'll be at 140 or 150. So the spot prices are very different. So, yeah.
So that's a serious concern. And as Venu had just mentioned, that it's basically come down to the consumer. So would you like to break down which part of our economy is going to get more impacted in the next 20 days? Because when you wrote your piece, that was about 3 to 4 weeks ago. So today we are 4 weeks after that piece. So how do you think things have worsened for us in those 4 weeks, and what will happen in the next 3 weeks?
So essentially, it's not very complicated, this whole exercise, because this constraint either of higher prices, this whole situation will reflect in two ways. One is through the price shock. So you wanted to buy the chocolate, but it's costlier. The second is supply shock, where availability starts getting hit. You wanted a chocolate, you have the money, but the chocolate is not there on the shelf. So for the time being, it's the price shock. Up to a particular point, it will continue to be just a price shock, but then the price shock will then shift to a supply shock. Already, as Venu was talking about, there's a supply shock already for people who are not able to access. And then it goes back to who can access it or who's getting affected. The poorer get affected the most, because the poorer spend a large portion of their incomes on food and such material. They get worst hit by inflation. So the same 10% increase in inflation will hit you and me far less than the person outside. And so at one level, it's garibi mein aata gila kind of stuff. The poorer the people, the worse they'll be affected. And this holds true not just for people inside the country, but also for countries. Would India be affected as much as Japan? No. Japan has money, so it'll buy. It'll buy tankers from across the world and get it and run its economy, because the people can pay. So paying power matters. Our per capita average income in a year is 2,40,000. It's not even 2,50,000 in the old estimates. It's 2,40,000. That's 20,000 a month, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
if the prices go up, you get affected.
Yeah, please.
So just to supplement what Udit was saying, I heard an interview, interesting observations by an economist who was part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, was Sajid Chinoy. He was on Rajdeep Sar's side. He made an interesting point. He said, at the moment, the prices are not reflecting the actual demand supply situation, because countries are drawing down their inventories. So there is a kind of artificial kind of, the price shock is being cushioned at the moment. And he said that very soon the real demand supply will kick in once the inventories are drawn down, and then the real price shock will hit, and physical supply shortage will also hit very badly. And he said that it could go to 115, 120, 130 dollars crude. And he said the LPG price correction has already happened for the commercial LPG, right? 943 rupees per cylinder increase. He said it is inevitable that very soon the diesel and petrol price will also have to reflect the demand supply actual situation. They have to go up.
So essentially, food and energy, oil, these things we are seeing that we are expecting inflation, so inflationary expectations are high. So if we go to Mr. Dua, with your experience in the FMCG world, you worked with Unilever for several years, you were based in Oman for some time, you're working in e-mobility, EV cars, and you also worked with Dish TV, you worked with Hero Honda. So you're in the slightly above food segment of FMCG and motorcycles and EVs. So how do you think that is getting impacted, and what do you see happening if this war stretches for another 4 weeks?
Thanks. It was interesting to listen to both the fellow panelists. And when you said it's reached the kitchen, I was thinking actually it's reached the home and it's reached the garage, everywhere, because definitely we can see the writing on the wall. I also liked what you quoted of Mr. Shinoy, that currently actually the inventories are being run down and the price shock is not being felt. But in coming days and months, that definitely can materialize. So at the moment, I will say, he said Garibi mein aata gila. I had learned Annapurna Atta for Hindustan Lever, and I was also thinking about, the fact that right now, actually, even at the food level, I will say, there is a shift happening back from, let's say, branded to commodities, because that's what happens when the prices start going up. The brands start taking some actions. The commoditization starts happening on one end, and on the other end, the premiumization starts happening. So if you look at the automobile industry, you had a very good analysis yesterday, which was showing that the cars actually which are in 10 to 20 lakh and 20 lakh and more bracket have actually started doing better than the cars which are below 10 lakh bracket. So both these trends are understandable in a situation like this, given the variety of sectors that you quoted, Safi. Yes, if I look across these sectors, the combination of the price shock, the material shock, and then the demand shock. I think at all three levels, the price shock in terms of oil, gas, and electricity, the material shock in terms of, let's say, metals, plastics, chemicals, and then a demand shock in terms of income, inflation, consumption. All these things come together in most of these sectors. I will say FMCG sector, there's a slowdown of consumption. In automobile sector, which is the other sector where I spent a lot of time, it is more, a sudden shock, in the sense that people postpone their purchases, especially in, let's say, in cars in less than 10 lakh segment. And that's where you kind of see the drop. So right now, as I agreed, not much signs of any collapse or any major issue. But if the whole disruption continues for 4 weeks, etc., then certainly, now that we are a very globalized economy, which was not the case, which was not so much the case earlier, the ramifications will be felt.
So, from listening to Mr. Dua, I'm going to that phase that this war is, this question is for you, Udit, that we are now, what, 2 months, that's 8.5 plus 9 weeks into this war. So, when it started, we heard that the United States was planning to make, short shift of this and do it in 2 days. Then it became a week, then it became the weeks. Then now we hear the 60-day limit is also over in the US as regards the US Congress. Then we suddenly hear that we are planning to bomb again, and that's when oil, the futures oil went up to 125, 126. So, if this thing goes on, say, till the end of May, the first part of this question is that it's not as bad as we thought it would be on the 1st of March. We didn't think that we'd last till 5th of May without हाहाकार, वो जो एक हिंदी word होता है. But we've lasted till 5th of May, and most countries seem to have lasted. Maybe it's drawdown of reserves or whatever. Suppose we reach 31st of May with the same uncertainties and same blockage, and we do reach a hahakar level, then what are the options that Government of India has with regard to controlling inflation? Will it be just monetary? How will they do? What can you think about what they will do?
So one thing is that the world as we understood changed quite dramatically last year because Donald Trump upended the order, the rules-based order. And initially we also thought about tariffs, that they would change the whole world for us and it will hit. It didn't hit as much, but it changed something very fundamental about the way the world transacts, is that there is no longer a focus on consensus, there's no understanding of differential problems and responsibilities. It's everything is transactional, and that will now roll over in everything in the world that sees. And even if this conflict gets over, Trump has already said Cuba is next. So if you're talking about geopolitical uncertainty, that will remain. And that has fundamentally changed the way things will be priced. Going back to 65 dollars a barrel may not happen in a hurry. We will see extended this thing. As far as dealing with this is concerned, see, monetary policy is fairly ineffective when it's a supply-led inflation. There's nothing that central banks can do to increase the availability of barrels of oil or fertilizer or anything. All they can do is destruct demand, right? So it is quite remarkable actually when you think about it. What does monetary policy do? It actually actively drags down the economic growth. It forces everybody to eat less, consume less, produce less, and it will again hit the poorest the most. There's an element, this is not sort of talked about as much. I wrote one of the pieces that there's a great inequality in this of what the RBI does or any central bank does. It looks all very technical, but essentially it is a highly iniquitous world that we create, where we say we destruct demand, and it gets worse for the worse off. So monetary policy might be forced to do that because we have that structures, but they will not be very effective, right? Because it's a supply-led thing. There's only so much you can do to destroy demand. And so governments will have to then perhaps provide some kind of financial relief. Again, governments themselves also cannot produce oil. It's one of those scenarios, if there's no electricity, the whole family came together and played Antakshari, right? So if there is no electricity or there is no energy, you will not have there is nothing that any prime minister or anybody can do, right? But within before we reach that kind of Antakshari phase, there is this price shock which can roll over, and you can alleviate that by direct subsidy. So between every 4 people you see who's the poorest, who's likely to absolutely go off off balance here, give them the minimum support. That is the only approach.
So, Venu, this seems to be similar to the post-COVID situation, where the government was had to come in with a fair bit of it was not really a direct transfer of funds, but it was more because the government of India raised its focus on the fiscal. That's how we came out of it. So, would you have any comments on what Udit was saying?
Yeah. Sorry. So, so you're right. This is in fact, I had also mentioned this in one of my analysis that a post-COVID like situation could arise in terms of even then oil prices had really gone up, and there was huge supply shock, not just of oil, several items. So the government has already spoken about some kind of fiscal. The finance minister has spoken of some kind of a fiscal package, right? They've not full, they're waiting for the price shock to actually hit us more badly. So, in my view, many economists and other fund managers have said that that post COVID, already the world is up to their neck or maybe eyes in debt. The developed world is definitely, the US is I don't know 110%, 15% of its GDP. India's debt is also, if you take center state together, it's not it's a very difficult situation. So people have questioned whether how much scope does fiscal scope does space does the government have to deliver the kind of stimulus that not just India, other countries also that did post COVID. There is a big constraint there. Number two, for me, a bigger problem for India is not. I mean, you can borrow more. Interest rates are also climbing. The energy shock is also raising. Government bond rates across the developed world. The US is now gone up to 4.4%. 10-year bonds. Other developed countries also going up. So that's an indication that inflation is coming. Definitely, India. The big problem is. What will it do to procure dollars? What will it do? Because you can print rupees, but where do you get dollars? Because there will be a dollar crisis, and this also Sajid Chinoy has spoken of in his interview, where he said that external sector will have to be watched very carefully, because I expect the rupee to, if this continues for the next maybe 1 month, 2 months, rupee is going to go beyond 100. The RBI reserves, people say, oh, India has a lot of reserves, $688 billion. But actually, if you speak to people who inside the RBI or others who analyze reserves very carefully, they say that within those reserves, gold and SDR are roughly about 90 billion, 100. Then they have also taken forward positions, which is not theirs to spend to stabilize the dollar now. So altogether, if you deduct all those, you have reserves about 580 billion. It's not 688. It's 580, which covers about, in my view, about 8 months imports. Mind you, in the 2013 taper tantrum also, we were reduced to about 7-8 months coverage, imports coverage. So it's a serious problem that.
Okay, so inflation is going to be a thing we need to watch out for, which government must be already doing. The forex we need to watch out for. Reserves is a fairly good cushion we have, but you're saying that it's not completely as easy as we look at it. And Anil, in your time when you were in the Gulf and you were working with an original equipment, OTE. So what was we'll come to the economics part again, but at this point I wanted to know that Oman is like right there. It's just south of the Hormuz Strait. So what was your experience about the Hormuz Strait, which you're reading about now? Was there anything you can recollect to tell us more about the story going on there?
Yeah, I must say I've come to know Strait of Hormuz much more now than I ever did in 2015 when I was living there. 14 to 17, 3 years I was there. There was an interesting development which happened at that time, that US had relaxed the sanctions on Iran in 15 for a brief time, and I visited Tehran at that time just to kind of check out the business possibilities for our group. What are the new businesses if Iran was to open up, if the entire situation was to open up. But that was very short-lived, and we could not really do much. In fact, things became much tighter. So for me, I have been, reading the news and a bit of sense of deja vu, because when I went to Gulf, the oil price was almost $120 a barrel, if I remember right, in 2014 sometime, and in 2016 January, it had actually crashed to $20 a barrel. So it was a reverse problem that I faced in Middle East, because the entire demand collapsed. Oman, for example, had about 88-90% of its revenue coming from oil. Unlike, let's say, Dubai, which is mainly tourism, but Abu Dhabi, Oman are similar. They depend upon oil. So if oil collapses to that kind of price, that means the economy, local economy is collapsing. That means customers can't buy. That means that most of the people are actually employed, most of the locals are employed in the government. Your biggest buyer is the government. Let's say your cars, etc. So there is the demand completely dries up. So it was a crisis of a different kind, not of the kind that we're seeing now. There was the ISIS situation, which was very severe at that time. So there was Yemen, which was on the boil. I will say I came back in a hurry. It is one of my shortest stints, 14 to 17. Otherwise, I spent 15 years in Levers and 8 years in Hero. I must say that these crises can have those kind of ramifications.
Okay, so in your stay in Oman, the point I'm trying to bring out here is that we don't realize the importance of choke points unless they choke us. Like today, nobody is really talking about that Bab el Mandeb Strait. Nobody's talking about the Malacca Strait as much, except some thinkers, or the Sunda Strait also. And nobody's even talking about the Taiwan Strait as much. The Chinese also not talking about it. So only when the crisis comes, people talk about it. So, Udit, what are the other things that we should look for? Like आपने Cuba बताया. So Cuba is fine, but close to our world, we are basically affected by the Suez Canal. We are affected by Bab el Mandeb. We are affected by this Hormuz, and we have issues with regard to Malacca. So, what do you see in these three, four theaters? That can this whole situation go a bit further? Can it stall us somewhere? What would we do then?
Well, if we are Vishwaguru, we will be affected by everything. So, um, see, our energy dependence is huge, so it is very natural that any of these disruptions will affect us. And I think there are only 2-3 things that we can do in the short term, at least, is kickstart a rethink on how we internally use different fuels. What is the best way to use whatever fuels we have. I'm no energy expert, but I'm sure there is a way to relook at what is the whole bouquet of fuels we have, how much are we using for what. For example, a lot of cooking happens over gas. Can it be shifted to electricity? Because electricity you can generate from some other source, and perhaps you will not be dependent on that. So can you tweak that? Now, in the short term, all of a sudden nothing will happen. You can sell as many these electric stoves and whatever, but there's only so much. Again, this is all happening at a price as a consumption level where people can afford it. Most others who can't afford it, they will not. So there is one reorganization of, or relook of, what is the most efficient way for a country like India, which is so heavily dependent on hydrocarbons outside, to use our energy, and things. This is such an old point. It's like one of those edits which can be written any day. Public transportation. If you had efficient, properly functioning public transport, you would not need so much hydrocarbons, right? I have a car, my wife has a car. Why? Because there's just no way to have reached different places. So for many other cities where we can perhaps preempt that surge of cars being sold, and we see it as this great thing, how many cars have been sold, how many scooters have been sold, without realizing that why, can you have had a different future? It has now become a metric of our prosperity when it is actually deepening our dependence on. So one is internal relook at what are our resources available to us, what can we increase, renewables, whatever we can do. And on the other side, as the rest of the world is doing, diversify as much as possible. Every 2-3 years we are hit by a crisis and a new acronym. It was China plus one. Now for the last 2 years it has been anything but US. So it's just going around. We have to figure out different.
But all these years, so like I remember, it's about 10 to 12 or 14 years ago, we were importing of our oil was 50+% from the Gulf, or in fact 60% is possibly the number. Now I heard or read that it's about 35%. So we did diversify our oil sourcing, and much of it I think went towards the US. If Venezuela had continued for a longer period, maybe it would have diversified a little bit more, even though that is heavy crude. So some bit of diversification did happen in the last few years. Russia and all that. So is there, and you correctly said that there is no newer scope for diversification. So now you're thinking of diversification and reduction of usage of energy.
I mean, I'm sorry to use another Hindi proverb here that, rapat pade to har gange.
Please
Are
explain
going
that in
to
English.
our whatever diversification we did we do it with thought, right? Or else, Jojo, whatever we were being forced to do or asked to do or whatever we could do, we did that. I'm saying that do we have a clear we should have always had. At different times you can find planning commission documents, this and that on energy and whatever. But you need to, on a regular basis, have an updated version of what your energy policy is, right? As a country. The last 12 years have seen a youth bulge, So when you have more young people, you'll have to change all your policies accordingly, right? So similarly, more cars being sold, you have to immediately, the moment the car data comes, instead of saying, yeah, we have sold more car, you have to think differently, right? As a policy maker, either you can spend more time saying that, yep, we have sold more cars, or you immediately get alarmed, okay, where is the fuel for this? We don't make any fuel.
So Anil, yeah. So Anil, we come into this question that he's saying that you should reduce your demand in the sense that you shouldn't sell so many cars and have a better public transport system. But what about companies, like large companies? They would be, normally they used to work on, say, for this product, the supply line is very cool, it flows very smoothly. So I need 3 days of inventory, 4 days of inventory. Now everybody will have to move from this just-in-time system to stocking much more. So is that something which rings a bell with you with regard to the various businesses you have been in?
So these are very interesting questions and fundamental questions, why you're doing what you're doing, and also linking to your subsequent follow-up question. I think there is a difference between ownership and usage. And lots of our problems are to do with no policies on usage and rampant usage and the way infrastructure is there. So you see this shift from, let's say, bicycle to motorcycles and motorcycles to four-wheelers, etc. This has been happening over the years. And everything has grown simultaneously. So the cars have grown, two-wheelers have also grown. Typically, Delhi, a house, you'll have the car there, a Maruti or something, and you'll have a two-wheeler which is really doing all the hard work, right? And the car is there only for the weekend usage with family or, special use cases. So a family wants to have the comfort of having the car, and it is a measure of, like any other consumer durable, that you have that possession. It signifies a certain, not only lifestyle, but a comfort, a personal comfort of the family. And therefore, to some extent, that ownership is an indicator of, how well we are doing as a country. But the usage, the infrastructure, the policies, how we are deploying all these cars and two-wheelers on our roads remains a very important question that Udit is raising. Secondly, what you said in terms of therefore the company side of it, and the inventories in situation like this, because no company has aspiration to decline. Every company is wanting to grow with all the questions that we are discussing. I think from my point of view, there is one sweet spot that, I've come back into EV segment. I've not come back into ICE segment. So right now, what I'm currently doing is trying to, ride the wave that is inevitable from ICE to EV, given all the, energy crisis that we are seeing, plus also the pollution that we are seeing. This is the inevitable thing we've seen it happening in other parts of the world, and it's going to happen in India as well. So that is one saving grace from, let's say, my point of view, that certainly in the years to come, we'll see the internal combustion engine reducing and the electric motor going up. It will bring its own questions and challenges, which are fine, but certainly from some of the questions that we're discussing point of view, it is a happier situation as the world has seen and as India should see. On management of this growth, in terms of how do you then manage inventories and how do you ensure your profitability, in such case, without doubt. In fact, compared to FMCG, automobile has this question, in a more severe form, because the demand collapse that I referred to versus slowdown in consumption. See, FMCG, most of the FMCG products are necessary products. They are not discretionary spends. You want to buy them, and the economists around me understand that much better than me. So FMCG sees a slowdown in consumption, and the company strategies are more like, holding prices, let the margins get compressed, or reducing grammage, offering sachets. That's what FMCG has done. But in automobile industry, it's a discretionary spend. People suddenly decide to postpone the purchase, and you are loaded with inventories. So in a situation like this, automobile companies have to be far more proactive in managing the inventories. The just-in-time system that you refer to, which is more from point of view of your raw material and WIP, but in terms of finished good inventories, it becomes a more serious issue, because if suddenly tomorrow that demand collapse is visible, which I will say so far is not really the case, but if the disruption was to persist, it will become the single most important thing which will end up separating the men from the boys. And many of the small players may wind up, vendors may wind up, component vendors may wind up if it continues. And the bigger guys with deeper pockets will ride out the storm.
Okay. Yes.
Wanted to add something I just recollected. As you're crossing D&D from Noida side, you can see the side. I don't know if you can see it from the other side. It's, I think, LG AC, right? It says the key feature is not, it'll make the environment, the room cool, or you can be as cool as you want or anything. The tagline is, you can fix your bill. So you can type in your bill, 5,000 is the monthly I want to spend, or 2,000 on the AC, and the AC will then give you as much cool that you can get out of it. So it's a very interesting thing. It is somebody in the consumer durable industry has understood that, okay, वैसे तो नहीं बिकने वाला है, right? So I have to sell it in some other way. Now this is an AC where I will plug in the number. So it's almost like, you go and buy a prepaid card for your phone. It used to be, now I think everybody's on postpaid, but
So prepaid AC.
90 रुपए का और डाल दो.
Yeah. So Mr. Dua is a marketing person. All his life from IIM Ahmedabad, he studied marketing, so he must be salivating at this thought कि मैंने क्यों नहीं सोचा. So maybe you could do the same for the EVs that you're building now. So Venu, we'll come to this thing about the FX that you raised, and we'll talk about the fragile five that you've written about. So this foreign exchange thing, you say yes, it can go depreciate further and all that. But point is that compared to other currencies, it's always good to compare for like 2 years, 3 years, and say, okay, this one's going up, that one's going down. At the end of the day, over a longish period of time, the rupee has been depreciating by what, 4 to 5% a year on an average.
Inflation differential.
Yeah. So it's generally being maintained, and that is the only way a managed kind of a depreciation. Most economists agree on this. So, do you think a crisis like COVID, what did it do to the rupee, if you are able to say anything on that? And how should we manage the rupee now? What are the means by which we should do this little problem, deal with this problem?
Sorry. I'm not sure. I think during COVID, the external sector did not come into. So
It helped us.
it's so much focus. Yeah, right. He's right. It was not a crisis in so far as the dollar external sector is concerned.
Please explain why.
Because we were not demanding as much from the rest of the world. Sorry. No, so it's actually one of the things that can be explained.
Although the
that
oil
because of
prices
COVID.
did go up to 150.
No, just before COVID, they crashed minus 40. There was, I mean, there is no way you can have a minus 40, but there was a minus $40.
Simple equation. Your dollar outflows, I mean, your balance of payments are positive. What is happening in the last 2 years is that you are seeing a negative balance of payment, which is why your reserves are going down. Negative balance of payment means your current account deficit, moderate as it is, even a 1% current account deficit is not, we're not getting enough capital flows to even fill that, which to me is a very serious thing. 1% current account, any economist say, oh, this is like such a low to moderate current account, easily manageable. But we had, I think last year we had about 1%. And we had a negative, we did not have enough capital flows because last 2 years, the economic survey, it's not me saying, economic survey said two things, which to me were very alarming. One, it said, rupee was punching way below its weight. And number two, for some reason, foreign capital is shying away from India. And the economic survey said there needs to be a study on this, I don't know whether they've done a study or not, but this was before the Iran crisis. In my view, that crisis deepened even further because the way oil prices are going up, mark my words, you're going to have a current account deficit 26, 27, or even if you take just 26 calendar year, it is going to go above 2%, it will hit 2.5%. Now 2.5%, and there are no inflows happening. In such a situation, all foreign investors postpone bringing in their dollars, which is what is happening, which finance minister has been admitting, and everybody's, even the economic surveys. So FIIs are running away. This year we've had about, in this year itself, about 20 billion outflows, which has exceeded entire last year's outflows, right? This year? Yeah. And so that's the dollar crisis that I'm talking about. And the India does not, we are complacent. We just keep saying, oh, RBI has reserve. RBI reserves, when it goes down non-linear way. It doesn't sort of, suddenly you'll find within a month, it's like depleting very fast. I'm not sure whether this government has focus on this aspect.
So 2013 was a mild aberration, but over the years the general reserve has been inching up, and I mean from like 300 billion say about 20 odd years ago, or 150 billion, you're at 600, 700, regardless of the point about valuations that you were mentioning. Anyway, that's one point. But what I'm saying is that this, so this thing about sentiment, which you're indicating about FDI and FII investments not coming in the last 1 or 1.5 years, something has happened. Is it because the rupee depreciated much faster than previous years, or is it because of the statements being made from top offices across the Atlantic?
Well, if you go by statements which are coming from foreign investors, like there's Devina Mehra, she's from like IIM, right?
I know all the IIM people.
IIM people. So Devina Mehra is a fund manager now based in Dubai for now 35, 40 years. Ruchir Sharma was at Express day before. Now both said one thing they observed one thing which was common to both. They said that foreign investors are not talking about India at all. Now, there is an article in Mint yesterday which Devina has tweeted, Wall Street Journal, which talks about all the emerging markets as prospects for foreign investment. She says that India is not even mentioned there. So she says that the opposite of love should be hate, but indifference is much worse. Foreigners are indifferent.
So what should be done to alter that?
No, answer now. This answer was given by Ruchir Sharma in his Express interaction. He says if this government focuses on bringing investments, both domestic private investment and foreign, with as much passion as it fights elections, there's a solution.
So that's a slogan, Udit. That's really a slogan. I served for 36 plus years in government, and I have seen the kind of effort that is made by ministries. All of it does not come out in the open, so the journalists enjoy making fun of it. And we are a very thick-skinned crowd, so we don't really mind it. But point I'm saying is that a lot of effort has been made to bring in FII and FDI. A lot of statements and as well as efforts have been made by the finance ministry in getting Indian corporates to invest domestically also and create more capital, physical capital. But the point is that why is that critical mass not being crossed? What is that psychological problem? Is it the statements from the big houses in Atlantic, across the Atlantic? Is it the fast depreciation in the last 1 year? What do you think is it? And please link it to your story about Fragile 5.
Okay. So I would love to talk endlessly about this, but let's look at, first of all, why are foreigners not investing, right? The start of that question, you also have to first acknowledge that Indians are also not investing. In fact, it is worse. Indians are investing outside India. Net FDI is negative, right? So the first thing is to accept facts. Why you saying, why aren't others investing in us? If you find that I speak lies to myself, delude myself, you will not invest in my business. You speak on business में पैसा लगाएगा, right? तो सच को सच नहीं मानता, fact को fact नहीं मानता. Now, growth. Today I just blogged somebody on social media. I had done an analysis of 20 years, last 20 years, last 10 years, last 7 years. India's real GDP growth annual over last 7 years has been less than 5.5%. Right? Now government insists, and people who like the government insist. And I have...
This is after revision, right?
This is after... No. This is because there is no back series. This is old GDP. This is the higher version of GDP, right?
Last 10 years, 5.5.
Yeah, already overstate ho raha hai, right? That overstated GDP has been growing at less than 5.5. It is 5.4. So if you round off, it will be 5. At 5.4.
Last 10 years.
Last 7 years.
7 years.
Why did I take 7? Because it is from 2019. And why do I... And everybody keeps saying, why do you include the COVID year? It's almost like you can hit a 6 without a backlift. कोविड के इमीडिएटली बाद वाले साल का 9% लेंगे, लेकिन कोविड का -6 नहीं लेंगे. ऐसा नहीं होता है. Percentages.
So the point you're making is to recognize
first
the
of all,
fact.
So if once you accept that
Yeah.
you're growing at less than 5.5, that immediately brings down the expectation.
No, so suppose I was expecting 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. I still want to grow further. So what are the ways and means that we should use, especially in this Gulf crisis, to go beyond and protect our existing growth, whether it's 5.5 or 6.5 or 7.5, and grow faster? What are those ways and means? Anil, I'll come to you after that.
So I would say that, most investors are primarily driven by profit motive, right? From the global perspective, they can look that your growth is actually not that great. Your corporates are not actually making that much sales, right? And so why should I right now invest? And there are not many companies, somebody mentioned this in terms of vitality of the stock market. How many companies are actually doing very well? There'll be maybe one or two business houses which are doing really well, right? So are the situation conducive, right? I mean, I am not an expert on what it would be in different sectors. I can say about media. Do you think media can generate more GDP in this country? It can. But can it? Because for that I will need freedom of speech and freedom after speech. I don't have that. So I cannot create that GDP. And what is the reason for that? Law and order. Can somebody threaten me? The today's incident that I was saying I'm blocking is because I'm bothered that if I allow that, that will affect my wife because they might go to her page. And so this nature that somebody can come and tell that what is extra constitutional is fine, right? And it is not just one party or anything. It has now become par for the course.
So you think that this kind of an impression is carrying?
Yes.
But again, another point comes into my mind that everything I feel gets connected to 20th of January 2025, the anointment of the President of the United States. So
no. I mean, for India's case,
yeah,
I don't.
Just one second. So please do counter that.
Yeah.
So 20th of January onwards, you started hearing the first tariff war began. Greenland started, Cuba, all kinds of stuff, and then tariff, and most of 2025 was taken up by these tariff announcements, which a lot of people, including people in Singapore and others, were saying that this is the reason why the Indian equity market just grew by about 1 or 2% in the calendar year of 2025, which, as you correctly said, because it's a profit motive that drives FII and FDI, that must have restricted people from taking immediate decisions. But when you go back to 24, 23, 22, things were maybe not as good on the consumer FMCG side, but they were pretty okay on the FII, FDI side.
No. 24, 25 net FDI was zero.
Okay, so just
I'll
the
tell you-
question again is, what should be done to increase
Sir,
this?
if the federal rate is at zero, and if Japan is giving money out at zero, all economies, all emerging markets will be doing great.
Carry trade,
Really doesn't matter who is the prime minister of that country. Because you are flooding the markets with trillions of dollars and yen at zero. You'll take that, and if I come to you, I'll say, I'll have this thing I'm selling in India, and over the 5 years, I'll make so many billions of dollars. You say,
So you're
"Kya
saying
jata hai?"
that the US Fed rate and the Japanese rates are
Yes,
high, that's why.
absolutely. It's flooding the market. So and you can immediately see, and maybe I should do that piece, that you just see that when the Fed rates and yen rates have gone up, and what has happened to the emerging markets. Some would have bucked the trend, but the worst one would not have bucked the trend.
But Udit, that's FII. FDI is a different set
Yeah,
of
the FDI is different.
Okay.
FDI is different
24,
because,
25.
again, it's a law and order thing.
So let's go to Anil, who must have actually done some FDI from overseas to India or accepted FDI from overseas, maybe in the hero example, whichever examples you have. So what do you think is the FDI thing, and try and connect it to this Gulf situation, the uncertainty that is ruling the entire world with regard to where FDI money should go?
So I will say I don't. We've heard the numbers, and the things have been unfolding. Every year has been a very, I will say, eventful year. Starting with COVID, something or else has been happening, and I think I have seen the world become more insular. I thought everyone was more open. In terms of FDI back and forth, in earlier years, I see of late that increasing trend towards I, me, myself, most of the countries, and safer kind of behavior, at individual level, at corporate level, at nation level. That's my feel going by
So you're saying
multiple.
that globalization mantra is now overturning to deglobalization. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, somewhat.
That is kind of happening. It is, people call it by different names. I mean, let's talk about this current disruption that we're talking of. So one can have a fancy name and a common man's name. So I'm seeing, I met a scrap dealer, who is like really, who's bought a warehouse and he's keeping it a long time, because he thinks copper prices are really going to go up, and he's
Bought
putting
copper
copper
and
there.
keeping it.
But he's putting copper there. So all of us will say he's hoarding copper and he's not doing the right thing. But many other companies, doing something similar. What do you call it? You call it safety stocks. This company is building safety stocks, and one man's is hoarding, but the other man, more educated, is gets away with safety stocks. So I think I am a little more optimistic
No, you're
about
free to be optimistic.
everything,
It's a
and
free world.
I feel this is the time when we can actually attract FDI, because the global situation is not all that good. Not many markets are attractive. There's a golden opportunity, I will say, for India to be very attractive. We've seen that, with the PLI scheme, for example, the entire mobile phone thing, the exports which have started happening from India, it's become the major thing. With PLI 2, the idea is to move to the next level, build competency, and so I think directionally there are things being done which can kind of bring business into India. And India has the demography, India has the right stage in life, India has the potential. If we get our act together, certainly
So
we are a very
act together
attractive
means
destination.
the kind of ease of investment in India. What are you talking about? The getting a license, or getting permission, getting land, getting loans. What are you talking about?
It's everything, I think. So I'm not saying that things have not improved. I think things may have improved, must have improved, but have they improved to the desirable level? There is a long way to go. So it's not just ease of doing business, it's also, let's say, when people come here, what kind of infrastructure are we offering? What kind of law and order are we offering? What culture are they working in? Meritocratic, etc. So all those things, I think there is scope, and I'm saying it in a positive sense without really saying, because I feel that we as a country, with all our hiccups over the years, I'm seeing, I remember 1991 when we started our life, right? There was a Gulf War, right? And I was in Hindustan Lever, we just joined, and uh, clearly we were at a very, very difficult time at that time. You remember that balance of payment problem and forex reserves, like a day or two. At that time, what had happened? matlab, if this sachet revolution, etc., it started at that time. The corporates responded. The government, of course, did a lot, in terms of liberalization, etc. So at every stage, I can see, without really getting into who did what, that country has kind of tried to move forward. Every government has tried in its own way to take things forward. We have a long way to go, but we have immense potential, more than any other economy I see
So lots of
right now in the
potential,
world.
something more to do. Okay, great. Thanks. So Venu, coming to you, this thing that you'd written about, basically the geopolitics of it all. So we have had very good relationships with the United States, and when Trump 1.0 came in 2017, that's when he started saying that we'll withdraw all our troops from all over the world. Essentially, he started talking of basically what he said: I, me, myself, and me alone. So in Trump 1.0, this became the first time the world started hearing of this. And then 25 onwards, you started hearing it again. So that is the deglobalization part, where the United States withdrew from some climate pacts, various UN agencies, and reduced funding, USAID. Yeah, all those things were reduced. So is that the reason why there are issues arising in emerging markets, or do you feel there are other things?
See, generally, Trump has. There is no doubt that he as Udit said, he's upended all the old multilateral institutions, even international law, and he's in that sense. The way he's treated WTO, the way he's treated even trade agreements with various countries, he has followed my way or highway policy. And in the initial stage, a lot of countries fell in line. India also fell in line, like others. But India did come in for the maximum punishment, right? Tariffs 50% because it got linked to Russian oil purchases. So that has affected the prospect of emerging markets, because global investors they won't invest unless there is clarity on these issues. What kind of trade agreements are? Even now we are not clear what kind of. In the middle of Iran war, Malaysia just withdrew its trade agreement with US. India has not said anything. Made one statement saying that we are reviewing, but we've not said anything beyond that. So we have to give clarity to the world.
In such a fast-moving world, it's very difficult. So let me just
bring
one more point here.
Yeah.
So if you look at the this thing, the Iran war, so we've been impacted. Who were the buyers? China, India, South Korea, and Japan were the four big guys who were dependent on Gulf oil and gas. Okay, 70%, 80%. Who was dependent on Gulf oil and gas 30 years ago? It was the United States and Europe. So there has been a distinct shift.
The US has ramped up its...
So US America's shale revolution has been a catastrophe, not a catastrophe, it's a milestone change for the world's choke points with regard to energy. So the Gulf originally started with the main oil for the world, for Europe and US, the growing the economies. And then slowly it shifted to fighting the ISIS, fighting the Russians in Afghanistan and various other things. So the role of the US and its, these bases that it had was originally safeguarding oil. Second, it moved to safeguarding security. And now it doesn't seem to have a role there. So all the bases that are in the Gulf that have become the key point of contention now. So in Mr. Trump's deglobalization world, demilitarization world, do you think he's had to completely backtrack and he's going to now more militarize while economically deglobalizing?
He's there are two things which have become very clear about I won't say Trump. Trump is chaotic, but behind there is a method in his madness, because the US State Department is also, giving inputs, right? So, two things that have become very clear to me is Trump wants to, you're right, nationalize, deglobalize and nationalize the economy, high tariffs, revenues, etc. Making even steel there, although most American economists say the US cannot be competitive in steel. So, but he's obsessed with building, reindustrialize America, which is of course not happening. The use of military, his promise was that he was against forever wars and that he was pivoting towards Asia Pacific, away from Middle East. All those things were said during his. But now I find that he is coming straight back into West Asia full scale because of two considerations. One is, of course, he's committed to Israel's the Greater Israel project. That, of course, is there. The Jewish lobbies. Number two, as many independent security experts in Europe have observed, he is not. When he attacked Venezuela, if you recall, Marco Rubio made a statement, very interesting statement. One thing good about this administration, what you see is what you get. They say something very, very openly. So Rubio said, no, it's not that we need oil. Because US is today producing, I think 14 million barrels a day. It used to be 5 in 2008. And it has ramped up from 5 million barrels in 2008 to shale, as you said. to now almost, he said we want to deny China. So I think now that has, this whole Iran project is also to deny China the requisite energy for the scale up of their AI, because they are getting threatened with China's AI play, which is the world knows now, And Huawei has now produced the semiconductor chips. Now they are DeepSeek and Huawei. They have collaborated to produce something which is 1/7 the cost of what Nvidia does, So anyway, so that's a separate application.
So deny China is the target.
Deny China is the target. Therefore, I feel that this geopolitical, geoeconomic constellation that is emerging is Russia, China, Russia, China, Iran, and the Central Asian countries. BRICS is also part of this. I heard a very interesting American security expert. He says something very profound. He was I think he was chief of staff to Colin Powell. His name is I think Lawrence Wilkerson. There's a video in which he says that Russia and China are now they have decided, not now, some years ago, to shift a lot of the cargo traffic that comes via sea to overland. The China wants to do shift 60% of all their
maritime trade to land trade.
Land pipeline,
Pipelines
railways
and roads.
through Kazakhstan,
Yeah.
Turkmenistan, Iran, right to Europe.
They have 4 pipelines.
Yeah. So now India has to decide where does India stand in this. See, India is also part of Chabahar, right? So in a sense, we are also part of that. But then India was also doing some balancing by getting into the India Middle East corridor, right? Where India, Israel, Saudi, and Europe, that is now as good as dead. It is dead on water.
No, it can still go from UAE to Saudi Arabia to Israel to
UAE.
Greece.
So now Saudi Arabia, UAE, the things that are happening there.
So I'll take your point on deny China. So what the US has done since in just 1 year and 4 months is that they've denied 10. So Venezuela has the potential to produce 10 MBD, and Iran had the potential of 10 MBD. Iraq had 10 MBD. Russia has 11 or 12 MBD. So out of your 100 MBD, 105 which is needed, at least 40 MBD is here. So Russian 10 MBD has been reduced to shadow sales. So you're like if you're buying that, you've been reduced from on the books to off the books. This is from the point of view of China. You've been denied 10 MBD of Venezuela. You've been denied 10 MBD of Iran. So what is China doing? Is it a superpower? Is it a wannabe superpower? Or is it just happy to be a regional power?
No, as the Economist cover said that never interrupt your enemy when they are making mistake. China has been very quietly letting US destroy some of the pillars of what made US the international daroga or the go-to power. I was reading somewhere that the fundamental reason why USSR lost to US was because they tried to match US military might when they could not match them in economic might, right? And after a while, that thing went out of whack. You spent too much on military. There was no way the center would hold, and it just frittered. What is US trying to do? I mean, if you think purely in the mold in which Trump came, they need money for their own country, for their own health. Why should anybody, if we were all Americans, we might think, why do we need to pay so high for our health care and everything? So they need money for that. And that is the promise on which he came. But for this US to hold, it needed both allies in Europe, and it needed a hold in Middle East or West Asia. And it's totally true. If we were all Americans and in a closed door, we would all say, regardless of what happens, we will not let anybody control the area. We will decide who gets oil, right? At whatever price. So it's a very clear that in many ways, and there is no real cogence to what Trump often does. On one day he's saying no wars, and next day he's having war. He's already ruined his relationship with allies on tariff. You see Europe now reacting to it. China is quietly seeing this, US is failing to project power because you're not able to even get Hormuz open. So what is the point? Okay, you have so much. US has $1 trillion defense budget, right?
Wanting to go to 1.5.
Yeah, and going to 1 point. So, and the other fellow doesn't have anything for 40 years. The economy has been under sanctions. And you're saying we have defeated their navy. It was not a fight anyway. So you've actually come off looking very insignificant.
So from the war point of view.
So China is doing the right thing. Now the problems with China are more fundamental of their own making. Just like I would say that our problems are of our own making. It's not so much if we could get our house. The people talk about de-dollarization, yuan. How would China? How can China make you hold their currency? There is no clarity. Do you know the deficit in China? No. Do you know the growth rate? No. There are question marks on their population size also. Nobody knows whether they're actually that. So if you do not know anything about the currency of that country,
no trust
why
of that
would
currency.
When you say dollar is the currency, it's the trust.
So then you're coming to something very interesting, and it's just leading up from what you just said. So Anil, you've been in petrodollar world. So de-dollarization is a nice new term being bandied about everywhere. कि de-dollarization हो रहा है, China's coming. Petrodollar is going, and some yuan dollar, petro yuan is coming. So would you have any views on that?
No, certainly. I think from India's point of view, it is, and even from global point of view, some amount of diversification is good. Otherwise, I think you're putting too many eggs in one basket, and it's kind of desirable for that to.
Some level of de-dollarization.
That's true. From the world's point of view, from India's point of view.
So just to give you a little
US,
number,
of course, doesn't want it.
As you know, I've started writing a Substack, and I was working on a piece on de-dollarization, trying to compete with the journalists. And in my private life, in my government life, I was not allowed to be a journalist by my bosses, some of whom are sitting here. So now I'm trying to be one. So dollar, the designation of the dollar in global reserves was 85% up to about 1990s. Then the euro came, which nobody talks about. And the euro has clawed away 20 to 25% of the dollar, and 20 to 25% of the world's reserves are in euro. So already that little hit has happened. Now the yuan is still at like 2% or 3%. Global trade, as he correctly said, nobody trusts that term as yet, which is why de facto people go into the dollar. Then there is a completely non-US Fed created dollar economy, which they used to call euro dollars even before the petrodollar came, where European banks were allowed to create their own dollars on their balance sheet without actually having any dollars. That's when the gold standard went. So the trust and the amplification of dollar has been so much that it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And so if that is the case,
doesn't seem to be going anywhere, meaning
it doesn't seem to be vanishing. It's not this point about petrodollar and going away and yuan becoming the big currency is like very, very far away. You must wait for my piece, and then I'll give you more on that.
No, I have a view on this.
Yeah, so please tell us. I want this discussion to end on that because we have about 10 minutes left.
See, dollar is today the most, in terms of networks, in terms of at the retail level of you and I, it's the most traded currency, most accepted currency. And dollars, this thing will remain. Dollar will remain a leading currency for the next foreseeable future. Nobody is saying that dollar will vanish. Now, even the pound, when dollar got the position of primacy, took over leadership from the pound. Pound also continued for several decades. No, pound never sort of just vanished. It remained a reasonably, kind of used currency. So what China is doing is, my view is that China doesn't have the ambition as yet to go capital account convertible and create a retail market for the yuan, that it should be. All China is doing now is, at the wholesale level, they have started invoicing, since they have huge trade with various countries, the big ones. They have just started invoicing their trade with other countries in yuan. So their invoicing of their trade has gone up from 3% to now nearly 50% in the last. That's a huge increase. Huh? And so much so that now, I read somewhere that Russian banks are now start keeping yuan because they buy so much from China. They need, just as other countries need dollars, the Russians they need.
So Russia and yuan are.
So Russia and yuan, and Iran is also now, this whole thing about yuan, paying in yuan, is also part of the larger.
Do you see it's chipping away?
It's a kind of chipping away, and it's people like to see things in binary, dollar or ye aa gaya, dollar chale jayega. And please notice that it is not just yuan which is challenging the dollar. I mean, in a limited way, in a regional. Recently, gold holdings by central banks crossed the total holdings of US Treasury assets by central bank. So there's a graph, it went up. So the implicit, since a lot of people are holding gold because of, lack of reducing trust in the dollar, what may happen dollar, after 5 years. So gold is acting as an implicit trust asset, underlying. So it is not just yuan, it is the gold.
So the sterling.
India is also piling up gold.
So the sterling basically rode to fame on not just its strength as a global currency, but also on military power.
Yeah.
So was the guilder before that.
Yeah.
So the US
before that,
also got
French currency was Spanish. Yeah.
So the dollar has military power as well as economic power.
Yeah.
And the yuan only has economic power. They're not showing off their military power. So we do see that the American world will continue to run the world for quite some time.
By the way, China has issued last week, I don't know whether you're aware,
Yeah.
they passed a law saying that counter sanctions.
Yeah.
We reject US sanctions.
Reject and so something they should have done on day one. I wonder why they took 8 years to
they're
do
3
it.
weeks late.
Yeah. No, so the point is that the US power is here to stay as a superpower.
Yeah.
The Chinese are biding their time.
Yeah, basically biding the time.
So in our case, with regard to our supply lines coming from the Gulf, do we have any other option but to be on the American side?
For supply of energy?
For basically the big guy is the America.
Yeah.
So do we have any other option not to be on his side?
Well, that's where diplomacy comes in, right? So you don't need to be coerced by, you don't need to under duress do things, that if America says buy Russian oil, don't buy now. So you go up, Russia's share went up from less than 2% to 40%.
So if
then suddenly you're told bring it from 40 down to Trump is telling you 0. How do you do that?
So then he threatens you with 25% of tariff. So what else do you do?
I think all other countries have learned to call Trump's bluff. He starts with a high kind of tariff threat rhetoric, and then he slowly comes down because he realizes that his own family has a lot of businesses. I think the biggest insurance against the war in Iran today is a $6 billion private equity fund called Affinity, which is run by Jared Kushner, where Saudi has 2.5 billion contribution and UAE has 1.5 billion, and he's getting a annual fee of $140 million to run this thing. So I think that's the biggest insurance.
So we should invest in that, you're saying. Yeah. So Anil, any closing remarks? And then we'll go to Udit and then we can close up.
No, so I'll say that the whole topic was about the war and the disruption it's causing. I think the world can ill afford this war. As I can see, it's not only impacting the Gulf region and countries like ours. I think US itself is quite adversely impacted at the moment. the inflation going up out there, and the general public opinion. So it may linger on for some time, but I personally feel that, the world will ride it out, India will ride it out, corporates will ride it out. But yes, the longer it goes, the men and the boys keep getting separated. That will happen everywhere.
Yeah. Udit.
So, I mean, the world is fragmenting in many ways, but it's also creating opportunities for every country. For example, the situation in oil. Right now, we are all down on oil and thinking about renewable. But just like you think in a contrary manner in the market and bet on value, it's a great idea to bet on oil. If the whole world is going to shift to renewable, I should get oil cheap, right? And my Maruti 800 is so much cheaper and affordable for me, right? Because the engine runs for 15 years without a worry. It's all technology which is sorted. Even the Himalaya, I'll get a mechanic to sort it out, as against some big bulky EV, which is a white elephant for me, right? So for a country like India, if you were to think of consumers and not producers, and wanting to sell, yeah, जब बर्ड फ्लू हुआ तो आप कहें कि मुर्गा खा लो अभी सस्ते में मिल रहा है, right? That kind of a thing. So it's like that. There's a plague going around in oil, but that will create opportunities. If the whole world is shifting renewable, right? Why shouldn't we figure out interesting ways to do it? Now, I cannot give the answer because I'm a journalist and I have no clue about the world. That's why I'm a journalist. The people who know this thing should be nimble enough to figure out where is the opportunity in this world. There must be an opportunity in this world, right?
Great.
The US has
That's an interesting
best,
point.
yeah. US has best fund managers as the treasury secretaries,
Yeah.
right? So we figure out the right people, get the smart people in.
Going back to coal.
Thank you. So one thing in government I used to always think is that the journalists have got the best job. They can commentate on anything, whether on the plus side of something or the minus side of something, and the poor government guy has to basically respond.
It has gotten better now. We don't even have to do that and get money.
So we'll see if there are any questions. Otherwise, then we'll wind up. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. That was all very enlightening. A question I want to ask is actually in this title, India's supply chain in a world where Trump is at war. Would that not be more accurate? Because really, Trump can decide at any moment that, okay, the war is at an end. Nobody else is fighting nobody else. Europe is not at war. Asia is not at war. None of the other continents are at war. So if that is so, and with the US elections coming, this congressional elections coming up in November, now we are in May, all that has been said about the impact, would that still, and by about September, the congressional elections pressures would kick in. The Republican Party candidates will start, worrying about their own prospects for re-election and so on. That's already happening. So all that is being said about the constraints today, would they remain valid 3 months down the line? Number one. If they are, then how much longer can we anticipate them to be, same kind of difficult situation? And then all that forward planning, etc., comes into play. Otherwise, the question I want to ask is, whatever we are today talking about, are we planning for 3 months, 90 days, 100 days?
What you're saying is that it's basically Trump who's creating all these problems, and after 90 to 120 days, it's possible that he may get into election mode and not be ready for all these things.
It's not me who's saying that.
The world is
Even
saying
the
it.
German chancellor is saying this.
So is there anything you would like to respond to that?
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is true that everybody is holding their breath till the midterms, right? But you have also to understand that regardless of what happens in midterms, and possibly if he's sort of put in if the Republicans get a snub, he may further double down on many of these bets because he doesn't have to fight another election, right? Until unless he decides to now append that basic rule that you can have more than 2 terms. So which means that you have 2 years of even more chaos, right? Now it may not happen, but I do not any further trust American people who have re-elected this man twice. If you want to trust, you trust. I don't want to trust. I think most policymakers, leaders will now always keep this doubt in their head. And this is again going back to why people don't invest or why don't they shake hands properly, is because you have seeded a doubt, right? As you said, nobody is fighting anybody. You had a system going on, right? Now you have appended everything, and that you will not be able to put the genie back in the bottle, right? Now people will figure out different ways. And also the fact that now you've made it very possible for China to not even have to make a case.
And just sit there and watch.
It just keeps doing whatever it's doing.
Thanks. Any other question? Yes, sir.
I have a very simple question. You said that you are convinced that the GDP growth of India is less than 5.5%.
No, it's not about a conviction, it's a mathematics.
It's a fact. Okay, it's a fact.
Government data.
If that is so, then how it is, leave aside our Niti Aayog and other organizations with the country, but even international organizations like IMF, World Bank, or financial institutions, they are all saying 6.5% and all, and nobody considers this.
No, you got me wrong in that. I'm saying that over...
His calculation is...
I'm saying when you look at it in one particular year, you can have a growth of 8% or 7%. But when you look over a period of time, it will normalize to 5.5, less than that. Why? Because you've had slower growth in the past. And growth rates, we have been fascinated with growth rates, but in times of massive disruptions, growth rates can be very misleading. I can reduce your salary from 100 by 10%, and next year increase it by 10%, and you will be at 99. And in the between, you would have lost 2 years of growth, right?
With your 7-year data is the data that IMF will also do the same calculation.
Yeah, I mean, no, that is the data that
IMF
all the
takes from
businessmen
India
are
only.
doing, You are, so there is one situation where you say, we are growing at 9%, nobody is investing in us, right? We have the strong fundamentals. And the other thing is that you're not able to grow at 5.5. That's why nobody is investing. What makes sense?
One of the biggest debates which underlies this debate of 5.5 versus 6.5 versus 7.5 is the fact that balance sheets are never real growth. Balance sheets of corporations are always nominal growth. So it's the nominal growth which is the actual numbers growth that is happening. The moment you come to real, you have another factor which is called the GDP deflator, which is almost the same or slightly different from inflation. So it is net of that. So when you're actually talking of 5.5, as he's saying, it could also on top of it have a 2% extra, which talks of 7.5, 8.5 nominal growth minus a 3% GDP deflator. So it's always two factors you're talking of when you're talking of 5.5, 6.5. So one thing which is a bit disingenuous about this debate is this, that it's always that fact which is talked about and not the...
And even on nominal, we typically, over last 20 years, we are growing at nominal rate of 12.5. Over the last 7 years, we are growing at a nominal rate of 9.5. 3 percentage points annually we are losing on growth rate, on nominal, right? Now, the counter to that, because we are highly polarized and politicized society right now and not looking at, they'll say, पहले inflation बहुत ज़्यादा था. आप तो earlier nominal growth was essentially driven by inflation. But look at oil prices, we've talked so much, and you talked about the fact that it crashed in 2015 after a high. You look at the high growth, high inflation area period of Indian economy where we were struggling. Oil prices were closer to 100, 80, 90, 100, 120, and then they crashed to 20. And all the last 7, 8, 10 years, you see, there have been very moderate size. This is the first time India is now facing in a decade high oil prices. You let prices cook at 90 or 100 for 2-3 years, and then you'll figure out what, rupee exchange rate and whatever. Like, it'll just go out of whack.
Thank you so much. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Rizvi that he was able to steer the conversation. Now, a couple of things about Trump, like you say that he is a mad person or whatever. So what I'm trying to say, there's a term which is known as tragic ambiguity, which is being used about him. It is being told that this guy is basically, he's not as stupid as he looks, because if you see Polymarket, if you see the kind of data that has come, that the betting just minutes before that he announced a ceasefire, there was a lot of manipulation in that. He's got a lot of friends. He's ultimately a businessman. So the thing is, ultimately, that's the reason why he is able to steer the stock markets, and the stock market is going up and down because of his decisions, and his friends are making money. That's one thing about him, and I think so it's quite logical. Secondly, my question was that
Logical and illegal.
The question is that US has got a reserve of almost a few months. I'm told, I've been reading on the net. India has got a reserve of maximum 74 days, it's been told, if you combine all the reserves. Now the question is, with this logic, the prices in India of the fuel should have gone up. It's not gone up. You may say due to elections it's not gone up, but still, US having so much of reserves, still the cost has gone almost double. So what is your view on this? Do you think India has been sleeping till now because of the elections, or suddenly we'll wake up one day?
It's not called sleeping.
Let Venu take this.
Or there is some strategic ambiguity in that also?
Venu, come on.
No. See, when market prices go up, global market prices, the US government links its oil gas prices entirely to market. So when it went up, so there also gas prices went up beyond $4 per gallon. Whereas what India did was, India had already kept prices very high, right? And through governments, raising excise duty. So government did the other thing, opposite. So instead of raising the price, they reduced, excise. So in a sense, we took action. In fact, the oil companies are bleeding. They are already, I think, the oil companies are, very soon, they'll.
Yeah. Okay. So
They show negative, profitability will be badly hit.
great.
So
Thanks.
one,
Yeah. So one second. Let's take these two and then we'll come to you.
So
And then
thank you so-
Manika.
thank
So
you so
only four
much.
more questions now. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for this wonderful panel. Actually, I'm from the economics background myself. There are multiple questions from this discussion. This was more than an economic class, but it was so well curated and I loved it. My first question is regarding the fact that is, let's suppose I'm optimistic about the fact that this war will end by the end of this May, right? So how much time will it take for the Indian economy to come back to the normal situation, which was before this war?
As I was saying, that if I was to look at the last three episodes, let's say 1991 Gulf War, 2003 Iraq War, and now this one, I feel that the problem part is that India is far more globalized. So that part has become more severe, and that will increase the time to kind of bounce back. But also Indian economy is stronger than it was, earlier. And that will be an easier part, a better part. India is more connected, not only, in 90s, everyone used to look starry-eyed about what's happening in the West. Today, nobody has, the world is flat and Indian customer is as good as any other. So you said you're optimistic. I had said I'm also optimistic. I think India can spring back very, very fast from this situation, as long as the war doesn't go too far. If it closes early, I think we're good.
Okay, to answer your question, there is a International Energy Agency has given an interesting. The chief of Energy has given an interesting bit of data. He said that this 1970s oil shock, 74 and 79, it took away on each occasion 5 million barrels a day off the market. He said this one is much more severe because it is taking about 13, 14 million barrels off the market. And this one has also resulted in, according to him, at least 40 energy assets around the Gulf region, partially damaged or reasonably damaged. They will take time to, rebuild, revive. We all know that you can go and Google, find out. So, taking these two factors together, he said, even if tomorrow Trump says war is off, it will take about 4 or 5 months for the oil supplies to normalize. Yeah.
Great. Yes, ma'am.
I may be asking a very off-track question because I don't come from economics background, but I just would like to know, whenever we talk about geopolitics and we are talking about war and everything, so our focus is economy, and it should be, and we are talking about globalization, deglobalization, but there is a concern, and there is a concern that should there be a people-centric approach towards geopolitics, because the way this war, the supply chains that we are talking about, the way this war is affecting common people's lives, and the way we are looking at the disparities. I'm glad that there was a talk about inequalities and growing disparities. So, and whether we talk about individual country or globally, the kind of attacks that are happening on immigrants, they belong to some country and they are living in a particular country. So, should there be a people-centric approach towards understanding geopolitics at this time of crisis? Because the real crisis is actually for people who are suffering because of war, because of supply chain, because of so many other things. So I would like to take your comments on it.
So yeah, I mean, we are, even in this phase of deglobalization, we are perhaps far more connected than any time in human history. And yes, immigration is a big issue. It's playing out in every economy, every country. It's a very human thing. You don't have, on economics, we can thrash it out whether it's 5.5 or 7, right? It can be looked at data and whatever, and then data can be reviewed. But this immigration thing, it's a cultural thing, it's a human thing, and there is no two ways about it. If I don't like sitting with him, then I don't like sitting with him. That's it, There's nothing, you can't, so the whole population decides, I don't want to sit with these people, then that's it. Now, countries have to decide whether they can fundamentally change what they had become in the process of globalization. And this is like, unmaking an omelette, right? I mean, how do you now change? I mean, why has US been such a growth magnet? Not because they kept reducing population, because they kept getting immigration, right? They got the best talent from the whole world coming to US and producing, right? You got the best minds. But look at what is happening in India itself. We have Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister saying we'll have a population policy where we'll incentivize the third child. Why is that? Because he's saying that we don't have enough people in the working age. So where are these people in working age? They are in UP and Bihar. So they don't want to get them from UP and Bihar because the Andhra thing will go away. Yeah, so they want to produce their own third child, because if the Bihari produces the third child, they'll have a problem after a little while, right? And there's also the gender aspect of it, that you see women you're not trying to have a policy where you bring women into the working age population right now, who's in the working age, right? You're saying, hang on, pop a child, let that bake for 18 years, I will pay for the education, then let that child come into the working age.
I think it should be called Udit Misra, not Udit Misra.
Thank you for a very engaging discussion. I'll be quick. So multiple times there was this mention of men and boys. So these persistent disruption pushing out the smaller pairs and consolidation of the larger players. So what I want to ask is, how does India actually trade off this thing between the resilience and competition? So do we accept consolidation as inevitable, or do we think that policy has a role to play in protecting the broader ecosystem? And also linking this with investment slowdowns. So when we are saying that there is a consolidation in one particular thing, so are we mistakenly, confusing concentration with strength? So that is also something.
So yeah, there's a certain context in which I made those statements, and fundamentally, I think it's a natural part of business cycles, and there's nothing very much wrong with it. The survival of the fittest, the Darwinian theory, everything. That's the way the world has progressed, and any such situations create that opportunity where strong survive and the weak perish. But Yeah, so you are asking a different context. That's why I said my context was a little different. It was more in terms of, a typical any industry where you have small and big players, like our vendor base, where said. So fundamentally, I think what applies there also applies at a larger scale, just to partly address what you're saying, oversight and more collaboration. So if I talk about, let's say at the industry level, it's more collaboration with vendors, with tier one vendors, with their tier two, tier three vendors. And if I talk about government's role, it is like more of an oversight that, it's a fair play and deserving people don't get wiped out in such a situation. So my mantra for government is like, have more oversight, be more fair, be more generous, be more innovative. And I'm sure at global level that applies, but I don't know who are the global bodies who can kind of enforce that now.
Related question. What is the future of United Nations, particularly its Security Council? And is India on the right side of this war?
I mean, this phase has again underscored that might is right. Jiski lathi uski bhais. Ultimately, that is what happens. Possession is claim. That is the way it is, And even the middle powers, Canada or Europe, now that they have got kicked in the shins by Donald Trump, have realized this truth. There was this lovely facade that we are this globalized world, we are all together in it, and everything has just got disrupted. Canada is not looking very brotherly towards US right now, right? And I'm sure that if Europe doesn't get its act together, there will be fissures there itself, because they don't have a lovely history of shaking hands with each other. So,
I think I will just say one thing in regard to United Nations. I think UN is increasingly looking like Bhishma Pitama in Mahabharata.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks. We had a very engaging conversation, excellent questions, and a lot of things to think about. And I am taking a lot of things to think about back home, and there are a lot of new things to write about. So thank you so much, Mr. Mishra, Mr. Dua, and Mr. Venu for coming by and spending time with us.